Hello again, and thanks for joining The Breakdown, the show that dares to delve into topics and aspects of important concepts that rarely receive the attention they deserve. I'm your host, James Sayer. Jordan Pierce is back in the house with us tonight. How are you doing, Jordan?
I'm doing pretty well tonight, James. Thanks for having me on once again. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to talking fondly about hate.
Yes, that's right. We're talking about hatred tonight. But first, I want to bring up an important correction from our last episode. On our previous marathon episode, Nuclear War Near Misses, I failed to cite one of the sources I used repeatedly throughout our discussion. The author is Sarah Whitmer of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation in her August 31st, 2017 article, Nuclear Close Calls, an excellent catalog of many nuclear war close calls and broken arrows over the past 70 years. And you can access that article at www.wagingpeace.org/nuclear-close-calls. So my careless error now rectified, we now turn to our topic for tonight, the origins of hatred. Now, we all use the word hate to describe things we intensely dislike, but it is more than just being mad at someone or something not being one's cup of tea. Hate has a well-deserved bad reputation for the horrific atrocities and vicious behavior that often accompany it. So what really is hate? Why is it so destructive? Where does it come from? And what can we do to reduce or eliminate hate? These are the questions that we will address tonight. So, getting started with that, just wanting to sort of, first let's define hatred, right? From like a psychological perspective. And according to researchers Fisher, Halperin, Daphne, and Canetti from their article, Why We Hate, in Emotion Review from 2018, this is how they describe hatred. Hate can be an emotional reaction to a specific event that is immediate hate, but it often occurs as a sentiment or long-term emotion, generalizing from just one event to the nature of a group or person. And hatred is also a stable set of malicious intentions combined with seeing the target as dangerous and where the hater feels powerless. The goal associated with hate is to destroy the hate target, whether physically, socially, or symbolically. So we're making a distinction here, right, between like hate versus like anger or contempt. Like this, it's a longer term emotion. The concept of hate includes low levels of control, high levels of obstacles, and intense unpleasantness because one feels badly treated, unsupported, humiliated, ignored, or uncared for. This sense of powerlessness may be fed by the appraisal that hate targets are dangerous and may execute their malicious intentions at any time. And this is according to Fitness and Fletcher in their article, Love, Hate, Anger, and Jealousy in Close Relationships from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 1993. So there are differences, right, between different emotions like anger, disgust, contempt. They're related in many ways, very closely related to hate, but they're more passing and immediate with different goals. Anger, for example, involves perceiving the other person's behavior as unjustified and unfair. And the target of anger is appraised as someone whose behavior can be influenced, it can be changed, right? That by having some angry outburst, that you're trying to coerce that person into changing their behavior. Contempt is where you see someone as morally inferior, and so your strategy is to exclude them socially, right? To either withdraw yourself to get away from them or to exclude them from the social circle. And that involves, like, there's a big theme here within psychological research and sociology about in-groups versus out-groups, right? And the in-group often tries to find different ways to socially exclude people that they see as part of the out-group. Moral disgust, that's where someone is like morally nauseated, morally sickened, right? Just generally more related to like violations of a moral code relating to someone's own body, such as like bodily contamination. And the concept of revenge is a desire for retribution against a wrong or a perceived wrong, where the goal is to restore equity in suffering, right? A sense of justice, and also to deter future, offenses or future aggressions. So we can see hatred like in different manifestations of human behavior, right? Whether it be individual or collectively between different groups, right? In groups versus out groups. Obviously we see a lot with racism, right? And there's plenty of examples, right? And we've seen like a recent increase in hate crimes in the United States since 2021. In 2021, there was an increase of hate crimes in the United States by 12% from the previous year. There's also, hatred can take many forms, right? Not just hate crimes, but just general oppression of minorities. The demonization, right, of people that are different, whether like homosexuals or non-binary transgender people, anybody who's different, really. And obviously genocide, right, is the largest, most massive scale, I guess, of demonstrations of hatred, right, where you're seeing examples of like millions of people being displaced or murdered, right, simply because they're, it's often, ethnic related, right? Like with the Holocaust, 6 million Jews plus all the different groups like the Roma, what they call the Gypsies, Slavs, disabled people, communists, socialists, homosexuals, right? In Cambodia, the Pol Pot's group murdered like 3 million people, mostly the professional and intellectual class. There's a long list, right? Whether you talk about Stalin or Mao Zedong, these people have like, I think Stalin was responsible for like maybe 20 million people being killed in Russia. Mao Zedong, like somewhere between 30 and 45 million during his great leap forward in the late 50s and early 60s. There's obviously the United States as well.
Well, a
right?
lot of that was due to famine, though. I mean, like that wasn't necessary. I mean, like that was. I mean, there were missteps there that were definitely made without necessarily a lot of care. I wouldn't necessarily pin all of those millions on hatred, because that had so much to do with just like the Great Leap Forward wound up being a great leap into the mud face first, and then a lot of people died.
That's a fair point. But when we talk about genocide too, we're also not just talking about like murder, right? We're also talking about like the demonization of people, right?
Which I can't say that wasn't present there as well.
Or just the displacement, where people's their rights are taken away, their basic human or civil rights are taken away, which you could see with slavery in the United States. Right.
Or like with everything that went on with like the Native Americans in the United States, or anybody not white in the United States, like
sure, yeah,
or some of the white people in the United States, depending on what time of our history it was. I mean, like there's been a lot of like racial hatred in the United States
absolutely from the beginning, right? The perception of European superiority over the native population, over African Americans, right? Believing they're inferior. Basically, anyone who wasn't white basically was believed to be inferior, right? And the belief was common that men were, intellectually superior to women. That was just widely the case, right? And obviously very, prejudiced view of the time that.
Which was also more or less the norm, like worldwide, and just
still persists, but to a lesser degree. But we still have many adherents, unfortunately.
Oh God.
Right, but yeah, you mentioned like how much the Native Americans, right, were harmed like over the centuries, since the 1600s, when Europeans. Or even before that, right? When the Spanish arriving in the 1500s, at least to America, late 1400s. You're talking with the Caribbean or South America. But yeah, utterly disastrous for all the indigenous people, right, of the Caribbean and South America, Central America, North America. It was just, yeah, I mean,
It's
and part of that
just an
too,
upward creep, yeah.
that a lot of it was due to, like, there was a lot of warfare and treachery and breaking of treaties, right? A lot of, you know, treachery on Europeans' part, certainly from a racial superiority standpoint. But I mean, to like you pointed out, not necessarily everything that happened was a part of it was necessarily intentional. Like, I don't necessarily think that like a lot of the people that were killed from, like, viruses, right, from being exposed to new diseases from the Europeans. I don't know that that was intentional. It may have been in, like, some instances, but I don't know that that was widespread. I think that's just something that does happen, right?
Like
When
a side effect of, yeah, just, the
people
new
from different
bacteria. Yeah.
places that
It's an
haven't,
invasive species.
yeah,
It's the same thing when, like, new fish get into a river, and they might be similar to the fish that are here now, but they wind up just, like, taking all the food and taking over, and the next thing you know, this new fish lives here now, and we try to stop that in nature.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it can have, right, devastating, impacts on the local population. So, but either
Yeah,
way, it's like in the United States, like, literally, the United States broke every treaty that we signed with all the different Indian nations or Native American nations. So, I mean, there's some things that's indefensible. Obviously, the Native American, that the removals, right, of, what was it, 1830. Yeah, the Indian Removal Act of 1830, where that's where we're talking about the Trail of Tears,
uh,
and where basically all the you know the Native Americans remaining on the East Coast were essentially removed.
yeah,
More
no,
or less.
that's definitely a hate crime. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, thousands dying along the way that
Yeah,
they
I retracted what I said about the Mao Zedong stuff. Not necessarily being hate.
yeah.
There wasn't enough. Yeah, never mind. Hate crimes all
So
around.
when we talk about hate,
Yeah.
so when we're talking about hate too, right? There's different types of hate, different levels, but because it involves, like we were saying, it involves the idea that you you want to destroy something or someone, an individual or a group of people, that they're, like, almost essentially beyond any, there's no way to live with them, right? There's no way, they're so evil, is the concept, that someone is so corrupt and evil, that and dangerous, that they can't be tolerated. They must be either, eliminated, exterminated, or, moved, right, to, like, their own area where they're forced to stay, right? And thus they must be deprived of their property rights, and at least certain civil rights, to make that happen, to forcibly move people, say, all right, you guys are a danger to us. And you could say this with the Japanese Americans being interned during World War II, that was done, right? They did that for national security reasons, but
Oh
that's
God,
absolutely
yeah.
what they did. They
Right.
just rounded everybody up and put them in camps for a number of
Yeah.
years. But that would be considered, that's, technically when you're doing that, that's a form of, a genocide, really. And I mean, we're seeing that now, even with, like, the Rohingya in Myanmar, what they used to call Burma, right?
Mhm.
With the ethnic cleansing going on there, where hundreds of thousands of people of the Rohingya had to flee to different countries. They're being murdered and displaced, right? They're kicked out of their homes, and denied basic rights. That's also going on similar, well, not similar, but in some ways similar. The Uyghur in China, right? A million Uyghurs, they're Muslims, have been put into prison, or, like, internment camps, basically. And they've a lot of Uyghurs have been forced to undergo forced sterilization and close monitoring and things like that. So, major crimes, what would be technically considered genocide,
Crimes against humanity.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
being committed, and that's what hatred leads to. Where there's this mental belief that someone is so dangerous that you have to deprive, uh, you know, that you have to destroy them, right, or completely remove them for the rest of society. Uh, but yeah, that there's no way to work things out, right? Like we were saying with anger, right? There's still a chance, theoretically, that your anger can get through to them, right? Convince them to stop what they're doing. But hatred is that longer term sentiment, right? That there's nothing else that can be done. Like someone who hates their dad for being a bad father, they don't hate him because he was a bad father once. They hate him because he was always a bad father, like his whole life, right?
yeah, fair.
And he was just terrible. Or someone doesn't like, a woman doesn't hate her husband because he was a bad husband on occasion. She hates him because he was a bad husband, like a lot or all the time. He betrayed her, humiliated her on repeated occasions, right? And that's, it's like most hatred, like some hatred can be developed immediately. Right? That from what I was reading, that most of the research is saying that, yeah, some hatred can be created from one really traumatic or humiliating or devastating event. That can occur, but most of the time it's something that it's a slow burn, right? It happens over time. Like
Right.
Somebody does something to you a lot, or you perceive that. There's the perception. It's right. Let's make the distinction, right? There's different, like there's the being wronged, and then there's the perception of being wronged, or a
Right.
perceived threat, where people may not necessarily be threatened at all, right? But they perceive that this racial group is out to get them and is a dangerous threat, or the immigrants are coming to take all their jobs,
Yeah.
which has been a persistent, that's been
Yeah.
something that's been used for hundreds of years, probably longer, by whichever government wanted to use it to, manipulate their populations. So, I mean, that's an old story, right? I mean, I'd say, yeah, it's a pretty old story. But moving on, areas of the brain, right? Now, I'm quickly moving to looking at different areas of the brain that are affected by hatred. There was a 2008 study, the title called "The Neural Correlates of Hate" by Samir Zeki and John Paul Ramaya in the journal PLOS One in October 2008. They looked into which areas of the brain became activated when participants viewed photographs of hated subjects. And this is so they gave the subjects, or they gave the participants a questionnaire, so they knew who or what people hated, and then got pictures of who they hated, and then showed these pictures to them, and then basically monitored the brain scans to see what parts of the brain were activated when they looked at the subjects that they hated versus subjects that they didn't hate. So while in an MRI scanner, participants viewed pictures of people they professed to hate and people toward whom they had neutral feelings. So there's the control, neutral feelings, right? They're doing a comparison. And so the researchers recorded which areas of the brain were activated when each image was viewed. They assessed the participants' hatred of the subjects, and when participants viewed a hated face, several areas of the brain became activated: the medial frontal gyrus, the right putamen, the premotor cortex, the frontal pole, and the medial insula. Hopefully I'm saying most of those right. The greater the reported hate, the more these areas were activated. Right. So just to repeat that, the greater the reported hate, or the greater level of hate that someone felt for the image they were seeing, the more those areas in the brain were activated. Right. The medial frontal gyrus, right putamen, the premotor cortex, the frontal pole, and the medial insula. Those areas were the ones involved with hatred. Now, the researchers noted that this pattern of activation was different from that of other closely related emotions, such as fear, anger, aggression, and danger. They concluded that though these sentiments may constitute part of the behavior that results from hatred, the neural pathways for hate are distinct. So that's pretty interesting, right? That you can feel like contempt or disgust or whatever, or anger, but that is fundamentally different, right? That the different parts of your brain are being activated. So on the findings of this study,
it's like they're all different types of rectangles, but like
right? So psychologist Lee Chambers stated hate activated areas of the frontal cortex, which were related to how you would then react, are kind of preparing you for action. Also, the areas around distress, reactivity, and movement. So you were prepared to react on your hatred. So it's almost like, hatred is as a, defense mechanism, right? Where it's activating you in a way that's preparing you for action. It is like an extremely hostile and aggressive form of anger, right? That is preparing for action like immediately. So patterns for hate share two areas with the patterns for romantic love, the putamen and the insula. This study noted a key difference between love and hate activation in the cerebral cortex. In love, large areas associated with judgment and reasoning are deactivated. In hate, only a small area of the frontal cortex is deactivated, suggesting that the hater may want to exercise judgment and calculating moves to harm, injure, or otherwise exact revenge. Another study looking at whether members of one group derived pleasure from another group's misfortune found that the ventral striatum was activated during failure by members of the other group. The ventral striatum is an area of the brain associated with reward. So negative thoughts or actions such as hate may lead to a reward or provide a dopamine hit, a reward to you inside your brain. And this is according to Mina Sikara, Matthew Botvinnik, and Susan Fisk in their article, Us versus Them, Social Identity Shapes Neural Responses to Intergroup Competition and Harm, from the Journal of Psychological Science in March 2011. So that gives you some idea that, different parts of the brain are involved with hatred. And that gives you some clues as to the meaning, right? And difference, that there are differences, right, between hate and anger, as well as the interesting parallel, right, between love and hate, that there was that section of the brain that was activated, right? The putamen and the insula, two areas that both hate and romantic love, they're both activated when you feel either hate or love, right? But that the cerebral cortex basically shuts down. Like the judgment and reasoning area shuts down when it comes to love. With hate,
that's so weird. I never would have thought that.
Only a small area of the frontal cortex is deactivated. A lot of it remains activated, and they're speculating, I think, really here, suggesting, right, that the hater may want to exercise judgment in calculating moves to harm, injure, or otherwise exact revenge. I think that would be the purpose of, maintaining activation of a good chunk of the frontal cortex is you're going to need to use your judgment, right? That's the thing. Like when you get angry, think about, we're talking about anger now versus, or like any type of powerful emotion. Let's say like romantic love, you're not thinking clearly, right? When you're in a romantic state. Can we agree upon that?
Oh no, I was being sarcastic.
No, I mean, I'm serious though. I mean, you're just like with the prefrontal cortex, right? That's where you're like a lot of the judgment decisions are made.
Yeah, no. That's definitely a reasonable assertion to make.
That
And
when you're feeling deep feelings of love, especially of the reproductive kind, then yeah, that your judgment faculties are suspended. But and then yeah, but when it comes to hate, that some of that judgment, actually a good chunk of it, is maintained for the purpose of destructive action.
right, yeah, yeah, best
Destroying its
planning
target.
the planning the killing strike, as it were. Yeah.
It strongly suggests to me, right, this is evolutionary, right? This is a defense mechanism for protecting yourself against the thing that's trying to kill you.
Right, be it the the other group of you know hunter gatherers next door, or some sort of gigantic animal that like you eat it, or it eats you, like.
Right. Precisely. That it actually does have a positive, can have, or at least evolved to
Did have. Yeah.
right. Yeah, that it has outlived its largely outlived its beneficial function, and is one of those things that is, it's like an appendix. It's just something we need to let go of.
Right, it's still there. Yeah. Like, yeah,
Unnecessary.
and when it gets inflamed, you really should just cut it out. Like.
It could kill you.
Yeah, right.
I think we're being unfair to the appendix. I think that
That's also
hate
true.
is far worse than the appendix. Sorry, appendix. That was
bad.
not a good analogy. But
Herbivores still use you.
yeah. So we're not here. This isn't the hate on the appendix show. Sorry to all you appendix fans out there. It was the bridge too far. But that. All right, so yeah, we're good. I'm happy we've moved into the speculation part of the show, which I always enjoy. But okay, so speculating some more here regarding the purposes, evolutionary, functional purposes of hatred, right? That it allows you. So let's make the distinction too here. Let's between you and I, as far as like our experiences personally, not just like you read about like hate crimes in the United States, right? Or you read about genocide, or see people being hateful to each other. That's one thing, but being hated, or hating someone yourself, right, on a personal level, right? We should probably talk about that, because that's something that everyone experiences. When someone, wrongs you like repeatedly, and I mean that's the thing too, is like hate often breeds hate, right?
Mm-hmm.
When someone is hateful to you, quite often people hate them back, right?
Yeah, it's one of those self-fulfilling prophecies,
The oppressed minority, right, or the people that are being hounded into extinction, understandably grow to hate their executioners. It's like, yes, hatred is wrong, but I can understand why you feel that way. And these people are trying to murder you and kick you out of your homes and rape you. It's like that form of hatred is, it's like not all hatred is equal. Some hatred is more justified than others, right? Like if someone is someone actively actually doing something.
Well, yeah, and it depends
it
on what you're hating too. I mean,
right.
like hating an organization, for doing the thing that it does is, different from, hating, the person across the street because they look or act differently, though it affects you not.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Is that the vast majority of hate, either between individuals or between groups, is what you would call race-based, or ethnicity oriented, more pertaining to or religion related, of not what necessarily people are doing, but who they're perceived to be, right?
Right.
Simply that you are this, right? You're a, whatever terrible generalization like people would
Yeah.
say about like
Whichever.
Muslims in the
Yeah.
United States after 9/11, right? When it got real shitty,
Oh
you know.
man. Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. It was not good. Um, just yeah, not they were all everyone was like so I won't say everyone, but a lot of people were very suspicious of Muslim Americans and slow to defend them. Not exactly in a big hurry to people came around, but it wasn't they were a little slow at the start. There was some there was a lot more tolerance to that prejudice following that and the subsequent sort of war on terror. It was just like the Red Scare, and
Yeah.
and blacklisting, right? Um, all that. There's always an other, right? And this too, right? I mean, the governments, rulers have used this for millennia to control their populations,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah. And, I mean, like, once again, the internment of the Japanese, I mean, like all of that. Yeah.
Sure, but I mean, it could be. I mean, these type of things go back thousands of years, right? I mean, how long has slavery been around, right?
Since forever,
You cannot, right? So let's face this then too, right? You have to hate someone to enslave them. You have to regard them as less than human, right? Or less,
or be so indifferent to them because you regard them. I mean, like, people don't, if you are so indifferent or so ill-educated that, I mean, like, you don't even see that person as a person, I mean, like,
if you think it's okay, then I'd say,
no, but no, I mean, like, no, I mean, like, it's still, I mean, like, it's still a vile and horrible, and whether you're doing it or not, you're committing a hateful act. Like, lack of education about it doesn't mean you're not perpetrating it. So I would say, yeah, and pretty much anytime, yeah, if you're enslaving somebody, yeah, that there's a level of hatred there, no matter what.
Yeah, simply be all right, and fair enough, right? That a lot of folks that are, if they're raised to, a lot of hatred is taught from their parents, and from the surrounding environment. And so kids are very perceptive, right? They soak things up like a sponge. They pick up on not just what's said but all the little cues, right? And little nonverbal things they see. That over the course of decades, this is what informs them of how to feel about the world, and what you see on TV, what you hear in the media, what you're taught in schools. All these things make a big difference. So if you're raised to believe that people of a different ethnicity or whatever, not trustworthy or bad news or whatever, until you have some type of intervention, right? Some occurrence that leads you to have sort of a change of thinking, right? I think that usually involves, like, you need exposure. Like, I think that a lot of the research has found that certainly, like, prejudice and hatred can exist a lot more easily when you're removed from the actual targets, right? That if you've never, it's easier to maintain a prejudice if you've never met Black people, right? Or if you've never met the group that if you're around them more often, then there's a greater opportunity to see that they're just people like everybody else, and all these stereotypes are inaccurate and unfair.
Well, didn't somebody say something along the lines of, like, the greatest cure for prejudice is traveling? Like,
I mean, I'm sure that
something along those lines. I remember seeing something along those lines somewhere along the way, and I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, travel and getting out of your sphere, and I'm not trying to beat up on rural people, because obviously racism does not just exist in the country.
No, of course not.
I think it has.
But yeah, get out of
some
your
type
comfort
of
zone a
people,
little bit. Just like kind of check some
yeah,
shit out. Like
people who stay in their insulated groups, or again too, like, um, people can be, groups can be tribal, right? And uh, especially, and like we also said, right, oppressed groups can feel the hate right back, right? Um, um, that it can be convenient to target someone to hate, to find someone to blame, right, for your problems. If we can just blame it all on,
just
whoever,
find somebody to pin all of this on. It'll make it a lot easier to swallow.
right,
Yeah, give us all an enemy. It's a lot easier than being like, well, we collectively as a group all kind of screwed the pooch on this, so we collectively as a group really need to all get together and fix it. It's a lot easier to say, it was the guys that wear the blue shoelaces with suspenders. All of those
right,
guys, we kill them and then everything will be fine, okay? And then
right.
like, yeah,
It's,
it's like,
yeah,
oh, okay. It sounds
it's,
ridiculous when I say it like that, but
they
why
blame,
doesn't it sound ridiculous when they say it like the way it doesn't sound ridiculous and people do it?
right. Well, see, that's the thing is, right, that's always been the case is, um, they can take a small problem and turn it into a big one, right? It's like, it's not that immigration's not a problem. It is a problem, right? But that's not an excuse to like hate people, from Mexico, coming here, or immigrants, or even undocumented immigrants. Even if you don't agree, right? I understand, right, that people coming here illegally, and obviously I'm sympathetic to that. I want them to be able to, you know, but we can't let everybody in, right? We need a better system. We don't have a good asylum system, unfortunately, because of our Congress.
I don't
Uh,
know. I feel
those
like if people have been here illegally and like they can like prove how long that they've been here and they haven't committed any crimes other than just like existing in the United States, like if they've got like pay stubs from working at a job where they're like paying taxes and crap, and it's just like, so they're just like we basically we caught them on the bus without a pass,
right,
like like why not cut them some freaking slack? They've been here, they've been playing like they've been playing by all the rest of the freaking rules other than that one rule that you made like freaking impossible.
yeah,
But like other than that, I mean, like, if people are coming over here and like, doing the wrong thing and need to be dealt with, then fine. That you do the
right,
wrong thing, you get dealt with, but I mean, like, the prison system is, for another time. But like, if their sole crime is existing on this side of an arbitrary line, then I mean, like, cut them some freaking slack. They've been working and paying taxes and feeding their families. I mean, like, like why put it, why still have, Statue of Liberty if, these kind of things aren't going to be like tolerated and, dealt with when we get to them, just like, all right, well, let's see what you've been doing. Okay. Find
right.
some sponsors or whatever, I mean, like
I
there's got to be ways, this person is not an asshole. Oh, okay, well then, all right, fine, you can stay. Looks like you've been doing fine, you're paying taxes, welcome in, here's your little American flag and something to blow up on the 4th of July. We'll see you then, have some hot dogs ready.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I certainly, we have to hash out like the details of that, because obviously we can't
well,
just
I
let
mean,
it.
yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I didn't just solve immigration, I mean, like, I'm using examples, I'm
This
using
is
round numbers for like an example, you know
so,
what I mean? But like, cut them some sort of fucking slack in certain occasions like that is what I'm getting at here.
yeah.
But again, that's
But
off topic for what we're
whatever the
talking about, aside
solution, right?
from people hating immigrants for the sole purpose of being in the country illegally when they're really just here trying to do what everybody else is trying to do, which is freaking live.
Yeah. I mean, and I think there's a key, so there's the issue between whether somebody qualifies for asylum or not, whether they're a victim of like political oppression, or if they're just fleeing poverty. There's a distinction there, right? We want to be able to let more people in, but we can't let everybody in, but regardless of whether someone's here illegally or not, they don't deserve to be hated. So
Right.
because they, yeah, even if you feel like, all right, you broke a law, you should be in jail, or you should at least be deported. You shouldn't be here because you jumped ahead, right? That's a big argument, is that there are people waiting legally in line that you're jumping ahead of.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. I wasn't taking that into account. Like I said, I
but
mean, like I was, I was using round numbers just to like,
I mean, that's just
go on a tangent that we,
such a
don't need to hit
complicated.
right now. And but then there's the people that hate them. I mean, like there's one
Right.
thing of like being like, okay, in the essence of fairness, you got to go to the back of the line now. That I get. That's the rule right now.
Right.
And so like I understand like why like the law means like, okay, now you got to go to the back of the line. But the people being like, oh, illegals, they're here illegally, we better go freaking set traps for them and like make sure that like if they're trying to cross in the desert that like they like freaking starve or are thirsty, and
Right.
like people shooting at them and like just like dumb stuff, like the people forming their own border patrols and crap that I've read about. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's an act of hatred, and that's the unacceptable bull crap.
Also,
like,
I mean, I can understand, because I mean, some of those areas can be pretty lawless and dangerous, right? And I can understand why property owners might be concerned about who's coming across their property.
sure.
Because it could be smugglers of whatever, not necessarily just people fleeing, immigrants fleeing poverty or persecution. It can be people bringing drugs, or obviously human traffickers. But whatever the case, I mean, there's kind of like a crime. There's a major crime issue. I mean so I think it's not something to be dismissed. But regardless, hating people that are coming, hatred's not the solution. Hatred's not going to fix immigration, right? Hatred's not going to fix the problems of our government, the problems of democracy. Hate isn't going to do it, right? Because you have to work together in a democracy. That's just negotiation and compromise and agreeing to a set of democratic principles, abiding by rules and the rule of law. You can't do that if you hate each other, right? If that's the thing, when people hate each other, they just, I mean, in many ways, when you think about it, hate really truly is, it's in many ways, anti-reason, right? There's no good justifiable reason to hate. Obviously, certainly groups of people, but even their individuals, even if they suck, right? Just get away from them, right? The hate itself, even though it has like maybe short-term benefits of preparing for like
it's a vestigial defense mechanism left over from when things were a lot simpler, and there aren't actually, I mean, like hate as a defense isn't the kind of isn't the ace in the hole that it used to be.
Right, where something was like trying to eat you every day.
That's supposed to be like, ooh, I hate spiders. Ooh, I hate snakes. Like I see them and I kill them because one time this other guy and my hunter-gatherer group got bitten by a spider, and then his arm swelled up to the size of a pumpkin and then turned black and fell off. So anytime I see a spider, I kill that son of a bitch. Like,
right.
That there's hatred that I can get behind from a time when you needed that kind of thing to survive. But these days, like
snakes, right?
It was the same thing. Yeah. Seeing poison, getting ooged out by like, even like mosquitoes and fleas and stuff, because, the things that could give you diseases, or like the animals that were going to come and kill you. Like, that kind of like seeing that and immediately being like, I want to kill it.
Yeah. I mean,
this I understand, but I mean, like a group of people for existing and having a different culture than you is not a reason to be like, just keep them, it's just like, man, fuck off with that hate. That's unnecessary and unreasonable. And even just like hating somebody for, there's no good reason to hate anybody is what, I agree.
Well, the short version is that the haters, when you're talking about group versus group, right? Out group versus in group. When the dominant group wants to oppress the minority group, it's always kind of the same thing. As like, this minority is a threat. They're a danger. They're not like us, right? It's always basically the same.
They're going to take over and replace our great way of life with their disgusting way of life.
They don't worship the
And
same God as us. They don't believe in the same things as us. They don't value life as us. It's always the same thing they'll say. It's always some fucking conspiracy every time, whether the scientists or the doctors are in some conspiracy, right? Or it's the Jews, or it's the Muslims. It's always some group that they're all in it together. It's the same, it's all of them, and there's nothing you can do to. They're all so bad that we have to destroy them. That's basically the psychology of it. Or that, like with women, right? That they're all irrational and of a lower intelligence, and so we have to, not give them a vote. They have to sort of, while they were, arguably, in many respects treasured and respected, they were also at the same time marginalized. It was within a sort of they were given like a certain privilege, but only as a second class, at a second class level. Like they were still above the other minorities, perhaps, right? But below a man, and I mean that persisted for millennia.
Never, yeah.
So very recently, right? A lot of this, I mean, think about the prejudice and hate that was just so accepted and not even questioned ever. I mean, when I was a kid, it was totally normal to like just, make jokes about gay people or transgender people. Like that was just totally accepted.
It was accepted. It was part of like mainstream culture. Like it wasn't even like a bad word. Like it was what everybody did. It was how you got a good cheap laugh. I mean, like it was at the point where it was like so like acceptable to be hateful toward like toward gay people and toward trans people and like toward anybody like of like the queer and like like non-binary community, like to just be completely dismissive of them. It was like part of like pop culture to be hateful like at gay people for no reason. I mean, like, and it was like just like,
and like disabled people as well. Yeah, like
absolutely, yeah. And it was just part of like, yeah, of course, and like and racism fucking flew too, like,
yeah. I mean, it was just accepted.
Yeah, and like I remember it. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that all that stuff flew. I mean, like I've worked in places that would like, I mean, like the way some of the people that I worked talked with in, the, earlier decades of this century, like there's no way it would be like acceptable anywhere these days outside of any place that you can think of where you presume that everybody there is very prejudiced and like largely white and it's okay to be racist, like and homophobic and like all of the above. I mean, like,
we have come a long way, I'd say, in a relatively short time, but along with that have come like a lot of sort of growing pains, right? There's some people that aren't happy with that pace of progress.
And they want to go back to the old way, and it's just like, like what are you mad, what slur are you mad you can't say anymore, is like my reaction to a lot of that when people are just like, oh, you can't even make jokes anymore. It's just like, yeah, you can still make all sorts of funny jokes, like, I'm a funny bastard, I make jokes all the time.
It's just about being a little more considerate of other people,
right? Yeah, you can be funny without crapping on somebody's culture or somebody's personality or somebody's identity. Like, I mean, it's kind of fun to crap on some people's personalities, but we have to get together as a group and decide who that one's going to be. Right now it's never mind, we'll tell you later. But
yeah, I mean, the people do. I mean, we talk about haters, right? I've been saying that word, but I mean, that's been a popular haters, right? As just that in itself is like a group of people, that there's a certain type of person that how long has that been around? Like 10, 20 years, maybe longer, where, haters, where it's just like some people just like to hate, right?
Oh,
And
I
that's
mean,
become
like
kind of like,
haters, and I mean that's probably been around since like the 80s or 90s.
I love
You know,
haters, right? That there's a lot of people that just delight in hating, and I think that uh, we all have at some point, that there can be, a, I mean, I've felt hatred. I'm not, certainly uh, before, and where, um, yeah, I mean, it is hardcore. You really do want to destroy someone.
the term hater has been traced back to the 1991 song "Psycho Beta Buck Down" by Cypress Hill.
Huh? 1991. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So, like, what? Yeah, that's a good chunk of time. 30 plus years.
Yeah,
Um,
35. Yeah, almost 35 years.
so, but yeah, it's like just a hateration, right? And so the terminology is new, but the the action isn't new. People, to some degree, like to hate, right? The way they like to look up to someone, they also like to tear them down, right? That there's something sometimes people, they get a lot out of having someone to look up to. It's like, a role model or someone
The
they
only thing better
aspire
than
to,
somebody to look up to is someone to look down on.
right? And even better, right? Exactly. If it's the same person, to see them fall and then you're like, look,
Oh
it's just like the
yeah.
rest of us.
That,
But
yeah. Oh yeah. That's why people always circle like sharks whenever something bad happens to a celebrity.
yeah, I mean, or yeah, I mean, a person, a celebrity, or a person of
Yeah.
any type of note, right?
Right. Everybody trying
Because
to dip their handkerchief in the blood of the
see,
king.
they're not so great, right? Like, when people delight in seeing someone make a mistake, uh, whether they actually even know them or not. Like, it's one thing, like uh, if someone burned you, like, and did so badly, right? Versus you don't even know the person, you just like hating for
Mm-hmm.
the sake of it. You just like the juice of the hate. You get a feeling of superiority, right? And that was another thing that these researchers found, was that uh, uh, you get the people are that the haters are coming from a place of a sense of powerlessness and insecurity. That's why they're lashing out with such an intense form of hatred, is because they feel like there's nothing else they can do. Like, if they were just angry, they still have something left they felt like they could do to take action, maybe to have some kind of change. But in this, you know, with hatred, it's like you're dealing with someone or a group that is perceived to be so evil and terrible that there's nothing you can do. That you're ultimately almost powerless. They've got you cornered.
Yeah.
And maybe
You
the only
have to
thing left,
destroy it. Like
it's
you
the only
kill it
thing
before
left.
it kills you.
It's the only thing left, right?
Yeah.
It's that they've got me blocked in every way. They're taking all the jobs, right? They won't give me a loan, right? Whatever it is, there's always something. Right? Well, I mean, you saw, like, with in 2021, after the COVID hit the United States, with it coming from China, and also like Trump's comments of calling it the China virus, and then
Oh
well,
yeah, and then the anti-Asian American hate like
yeah,
spiked way up across the country. Yeah.
anti-American, yep. And I mean, it's across the board, but any Asian, yeah, and Pacific Islander hate was particularly high after that. Words matter. What leaders say matters, right? That
Absolutely.
affects people, um, and that. So, people are susceptible to the information they receive and what their leaders say. And so, I mean, so yeah, we've seen it. And we've seen our leaders use it. Some of them, the bad ones. Um, we've seen lots of governments use it for their own purposes, including our own in the past, and not so distant past at all. And we're seeing people trying to use it even now in our country and across the world. There's still plenty of slavery and racism and oppression going on, worldwide, that can only exist because of hatred. Without hatred, a lot of these behaviors just wouldn't exist. It's like hatred is the mindset, right? Again, it's that long-term, persistent sentiment. It's not just a feeling or an emotion that passes with time. It's a feeling that does, as powerful, durable feeling that doesn't go away. That this group or this person, is so bad they need to be destroyed, and they're beyond redemption. To the point that you would, even enjoy, partake in, get pleasure from their demise, right? So we were talking about purposes of hatred. So hatred, like we said, has something of perhaps an outdated evolutionary function, right? And we've seen it used or misused, certainly with the militaries, where they can dehumanize the enemies for the purposes of war. Right? We see that in our own basic training in our militaries and other countries' militaries, where they train the soldiers to really dehumanize who they're going to be going to war against, so that they're not they don't have any compunction about doing it, or less so than they would. Also, it also allows you to dehumanize populations, so that the in group is more comfortable abusing the out group, right? Denying them of their rights and property, marginalizing them, harming them, or just outright getting rid of them. And it need not even be based on anything they've actually done, right? Just the perception that this group, right? Maybe a few people of this group did something, but then it gets generalized, to everyone else, which is the fundamental problem of prejudice to begin with, is right that you generalize the actions of one person or a small group of people out to everyone else in their group. So, right, we've talked a little bit about the benefits, or the perceived benefits of hatred, right? Providing sort of a convenient enemy that you can blame for all of your problems, right? This is the source of all your problems in life. Your joblessness, your things not going well, societal issues. Provides you also with a sense of certainty about what's wrong and a potential solution. And it provides an extremely simplistic and violent solution to end your problems. If you just get rid of these people, right? You move them somewhere else, or just eliminate them altogether. That can be very appealing, especially to desperate or prejudiced people or misinformed people, right? Who, have been given bad information and haven't had sufficient interactions with that group to know better. Sometimes well-meaning people can just simply be misled. People that maybe mean well but aren't necessarily well-informed or sophisticated can be misled by, clever, evil, malicious people who have a reason to mislead you. It also allows people to have a sense of a moral superiority, right? To feel better than someone. Right, that people you can get a sense of like, I'm better than this person. I have someone to look down on that is, so despicable that I can consider them, not worthy of, like a subhuman, or someone worthy of destruction. That they're so beyond. So beyond repair that they must be destroyed. That evil and that dangerous that the only solution left is to eliminate them. Obviously, many costs associated with hate, right? The negative health impacts on both the hater and the hated. With the victims, obviously the violence, the oppression, but also the psychological psychological trauma that they experience from that hatred, and all the associated psychosomatic illnesses that you can imagine that would come from having to endure, right, poor treatment. Uh, right, the worse the treatment, the worse those other issues might be. Haters can develop all types of health issues as a result of their hatred, and like
like hypertension,
prolonged,
like
yeah, prolonged, resentment of a group, right, that leads to certain illnesses like cancer, other diseases caused by like immunosuppression, also heart disease, bulimia, diabetes, and other harmful self-destructive behavior that
bulimia.
hatred. What's that?
Bulimia.
Yeah, that particularly with women. Yeah, that women who felt a deep sense of hatred were more likely to engage in bulimia. So that was a destructive behavior that was associated.
Wow.
Yeah, but also heart disease, right, and other diseases that were primarily caused by your immune system being
Like
impaired by being
and stressed.
because you're fucking furious at this group you hate all the time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so you're just in a constant like fight or flight, and your body doesn't know what to do with itself, and that's
So it's like a disease. You're turning your body into a disease factory, not only mentally but physically. Right? You're becoming a diseased organism by maintaining a mindset of hatred. That's essentially, in a nutshell, what's occurring, right? Whether at the individual or the group level, it's like not only are they harming themselves mentally, and obviously harming everyone else around them that they hate, right? And even those that they don't hate, right? Their hatred has negative impacts on those around them. But yes, their mental state, but also their physical state. And not so obviously, and ultimately, it's an endless cycle of violence and misery, right? That that the only way the hate would go away is if you totally eliminate everyone, right?
right.
But that rarely happens, and even if it does, then they just find someone else to hate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, moving right along.
And then the people that you hate you. They hate you for what you did to them, and you hate them for what they did back to you, and it just goes back and forth.
Man, the Hatfields and the McCoys all over again. Everybody had a great time.
People just wanting to get even, right?
Yeah.
Get even for what just happened. And they forget about what's been going on for the last, forever. Right?
Yeah, but it's never about just getting even,
Well, different people are motivated by different things too.
Yeah.
Some people use hate for very calculated purposes, right? We can see this with rulers, whether that be Hitler or Stalin, Mao Zedong, make Pol Pot. The list goes on forever.
Or like the banality of evil. Are you familiar with? You're familiar with that, right?
Yeah. Talk about that. That's a good point.
Just people. When you it resonated with me when you said people using hate in different ways. And it reminded me of the banality of evil, and I forget the name of the specific officer, but there was like a Nazi camp commandant that like helped design, like he was like one of the architects of the final solution, and like helped design the way that like the Jewish and the Romani and like the various other groups of people that they had in the concentration camps during the war, like were divided up and used for like as slave labor, or just killed right away, or used as slaves until they got too weak and then were killed. And like he coordinated all that with like this really ruthless efficiency, and like all of his coworkers and all of his peers and everything said he was not a particularly hateful man. He didn't hate Jews. Like he didn't hate gay people. He didn't hate Romani. Like he wasn't a hateful person. He didn't particularly like any of these groups or anything like that. But like he certainly wasn't one of the spit in the corners of the mouth, freaking shouting about him, red faced eyes bugging out, like hateful, kind of like Nazis that you're thinking of. He was. Right. He was a paper pusher, I mean, like he was a clerical worker, and like, I mean, like, yeah, and he just like he did filing and, you know, sorting and logistics, and very efficiently sorted out all these people to, you know, send them to the right parts of the fucking death camps. And with a, you know, and not because he hated Jews, but because he wanted to be very good at his job and get as far in the Nazi party as possible, so he could be more prestigious. And
obviously didn't care enough. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the banality of evil. I mean, like, and that's like, that's still like he didn't particularly hate Jews. Well, he certainly, you know, didn't, you know, have any, you know, thing, you know, going for him as far as like, you know, being friendly toward him either. Now, did he? You know, but like,
well,
it's still a hateful act, but when it's performed in such a blasé manner, it makes it like almost more disrespectful than somebody doing it intent, like with the angry type of like malicious intent, you know. Like this guy's just like, oh yeah, no, it's just like, it's numbers on paper, whatever. Like
it's the person's like a sociopath where he just doesn't care about anyone, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, I mean, like, yeah.
What happens to anyone, because it's irrelevant to them, because it's not them. Well, they don't have any real feeling of other, you know.
Oh yeah, and that could be too. But I mean, like this guy wasn't described like that either. I mean, like the sociopaths are often like regarded like by everyone as like just kind of like funny, or at least a lot of them are. But
well, yeah, I mean, this
guy was like normal guy, except, you know, he was.
All? I mean, that's a good question. Did he feel hatred at all, or is it the type of hatred where, you know, he's not angry, right? It's not white hot, but he just sort of accepts, I don't hate, you know, Jews or Roma. I don't hate homosexuals, but I mean, it's not, they aren't, you know, but he's still,
the guys that I work for sure do, and they want me to get rid of him. So I'm going to get rid of him as good as I can. And then he did. So, I mean, like, he didn't not hate him enough to like do what any, like, I feel like rational person would view as like the right thing.
I mean, it's like, think of it. Most people will go along, right? I mean, that's the thing, is that's why heroes do stand out, because there's not really that many. That's why great leaders stand out, because there's not that many. Great horrible atrocities happen because a lot of people do go along that might not otherwise necessarily, but either, you know, for expedience, right? They get something out of it, or they're scared, right? Purposes of safety, they go along with it. Right? Yeah. Tends to be a smaller group of people that stand up and fight, especially the greater the odds against them. The smaller that number gets, that are going to stand up and resist and risk, you know, basically everything to do the right thing.
Yeah, especially in like a totalitarian, you know, sort of like authoritarian, that kind of fascist regime, like, you know, makes it pretty damn hard to do the right thing, you know, and that's by design as well. I mean, like,
exactly, like those. Yeah, I mean, your opportunities to resist are extremely limited. So you have to go way, way, way underground if it's possible, or escape, or just resign to be either killed or, you know, tortured and imprisoned, or join them, right? Sell out, give in, and you know, sell out for your own safety. Yeah, people have to make that choice at a certain point. I mean, you see that throughout history, and I mean, we've seen it. We'll see it again.
Oh yes, we will.
Yes, but that it's the willingness, like with hatred, to, you know, see someone as less than you and dehumanize them, to the point where you want to destroy them, right? Even, you know, take away their rights, you know, to get rid of them, right? To remove them from your life completely, right? And put them in some concentration camp, or
terminate with extreme prejudice, I believe is the popular term. You know, like,
yes, it's a good way to say it. That it's a convenient, you know, scapegoating. You know, that people like to have someone to blame, and
it wasn't us; it was them. And once we get done taking all our frustrations out on them, we can, you know, get back on, you know, getting on track.
But there'll always be someone else, right? It wasn't just the Jews, like with Germany,
Oh yeah.
It was like all these groups. Same with Russia. It was a bunch of different groups. A lot of these different.
Right. I mean, like they built up the superiority of like the people whose support they wanted, and it's just like it's you people, it's the real Germans, not the Romani that came from here, or the or the Jews that came from here, the homosexuals aren't real people and this and that. Like it's just like you demonize everybody but the group that you want to like isolate. That's going to get you your power, and then you just
Which, yeah,
and then you stroke them, and you stroke them, and you stroke them, and you stroke them, and that's that's how you manipulate large groups of people, I guess. I mean, I've never tried, but I mean, it's worked out for several people, but it never worked out for the masses.
No. I mean, they're getting played, right? They're getting played often by their leaders. The leaders that engage in this type of behavior are the ones that reap most of the benefits, right? And they use one group of people against another, right? Simply to control them and gain more resources for themselves. It's like I think a lot of poor white Americans, right, in previous centuries, they were looked down upon by wealthier Americans or wealthier Caucasians, but they could still look down like on black people. They were still had permission, right, to see black people as lower than them, or to see Native Americans or whoever, right? There was still that was something they were allowed to have. That was the hatred that they were allowed to feel, right? That was socially acceptable. Like an indentured servant could still like kick down on a slave, right? Sometimes there were different stratifications, and that the wealthy used the white racist hatred of against, like, say, black people to keep poor blacks and whites from uniting, right? If they had united together, they could have been like a really good force to be reckoned with.
Not still could have been, still can be, still could be. I have hope.
Great point. That's excellent. And I think there's a greater opportunity now than ever before for that to happen.
It's true. I have high hopes for the generation behind me.
But that strategy is so typical, right? That strategy of keeping
divide and conquer.
Divided. Yes, divide and conquer, where people can't unite if they're hating against each other. If you've got different groups hating against each other because of bullshit they're being fed by their leaders, or by different powerful groups that want you to believe in these lies for their own, malicious or at least extremely selfish purposes.
Like, dare I bring up Steinbeck and his opinion on Americans viewing themselves as not an exploited proletariat, but as a group of temporarily embarrassed millionaires?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was during the Depression.
Yeah. Yeah, there is very much the ethos to get rich in this country, right? To want to strike it, make it big, and be like, used to be a millionaire, now it's a billionaire.
Right. To
have so much money that nothing is beyond you.
Right.
The fantasy to almost be above the law, essentially, where anything you command so much power and influence simply because of your wealth.
And that's right. That's why I vote Republican, because I might not be rich now, but someday I could be, and then people like me better watch their step.
Well, I think that was, I think that was always the appeal. Now, you mentioned Republican, and that's true. I think a lot of people who vote Republican do still absolutely think that way, but I don't consider the Republican Party a conservative party anymore, because I think they've turned the route of fascism quite some time ago.
They turned the wheel at least into full authoritarianism like some time ago. And at this point.
So I don't consider them conservative, but I would say that as far as conservative goes,
that's the Democrats.
They're with being conservative, that there was always a sense that with most conservatives that I knew or spoke with was that you couldn't trust the worker. You couldn't trust regular people because they weren't that smart and they just didn't make good choices. That the bosses knew better, they had a better upbringing, a better education, and that most of the workers were just kind of stupid, and like letting them have say, right, or have control was just going to be disastrous. That was the worst thing that could happen. It would be disastrous. And that's, I mean, certainly in a number of jobs I worked, even in corporate America too, that was the prevailing attitude, particularly like amongst like certain teams, like the sales team, like a lot of the people that you would talk with, and certainly not all of them, but a lot of them on the sales team, we have a very, or the executive team for that matter, if you got in a real conversation with them about this stuff at some point, happy hour or something, that the truth comes out, that they don't really, a lot of them, I hate to generalize, but there is this tendency for a lot of these folks to not really value as much the worker. And I'm not saying they hate them necessarily, but there's, certainly a disregard for the concerns of the worker. If you mention certain issues, right, they'll just be like, oh, it's another complaint, it's just more bullshit that they're just making up because they're lazy and they don't want to work and they're stupid. It's that just like that. I mean, it is offensive. And some people, they're not everyone's like that, and they're not all that the same way and the same level. Some mildly, some moderate, some horrible. But yeah, I mean, and some people don't feel that way at all and are very thoughtful and considerate. But there's definitely that there amongst certain types of people, and not all conservative people feel that way either. But there is a certain type of conservative that does think that way. That you can't, trust the voters, right? Or even find, I think that's why certain conservatives do end up having a problem with democracy and falling into authoritarianism.
Because they don't think that the common rabble should have as much of a say as they do.
Some of them are still kind of undecided about democracy. You're like, kind of lukewarm, right?
What's it ever done for me, huh?
Question the wisdom. Well, and I think obviously there's certainly some degree that was obvious with our founding fathers, right? That's why they had the Electoral College. That's why they had the Senate, right? They wanted to. I mean, it's always been dressed up, and I think there's a good point to this too. They wanted to slow things down for the purposes of deliberation. They were terrified of, hasty decisions, unjust decisions being made too quickly. Mm-hmm. I think is a good argument that's been made many times, and also, a way to make sure that their setup, the way they were set up, wasn't going to be overthrown quickly, right? That the system that they set up wasn't going to cause them any problems. That's less discussed, right? That they were going to be able to benefit, right? They were concerned about property rights, right? Understandably so. That that they wanted to be able to make, that people would be able to. That's what the Bill of Rights, to some degree, is largely about, is also protecting property rights. That you can't just arbitrarily seize things. That there's, that there is a process, that there's a rule of law and due process, and there's steps you have to follow, and that, that there are protections for minorities, at least, that the Bill of Rights does provide for, at least on a basic level, that to help prevent, mob rule, right? And out of, a prejudiced or hateful democracy, right? Because, democracy, majority rule, I think, is the best form. I mean, most people would agree with that, but it's still a potential for, that doesn't guarantee that there won't be tyranny of the majority, you know.
Well, right, but I mean, like, yeah, and then at the same time, there's, I mean, like, and that system, as it stands, is being gamed, all over the world, domestically and internationally as well. So, you know, it just is what it is. I've heard it said that democracy is the worst form of government unless you count the rest of them.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I mean, it's difficult because there's so many competing interests, right, vying for influence. So it's
hmm
very complex. Whereas if you have an authoritarian system, it can be much simpler because you just kick the
Yeah,
shit out of anybody that gives you a hard time, right? You can throw people in jail, murder them, make them disappear, terrorize them, and they're going to do what you want. Uh,
yeah. Simpler
but
doesn't always mean better.
right, no, because then people don't give you their best. Everybody's terrified. Nobody comes up with good ideas anymore. Everybody's miserable.
Yeah,
Nothing works
yeah,
like it should, right? Because life fucking sucks because
yeah.
everybody's so
It
afraid.
strangles innovation. Yeah, no,
Terror,
yeah.
terror reigns supreme. That's the thing, is it really does. And then when we're talking about hatred, I mean, and to like other negative emotions, like anger, and disgust and contempt, these have functions. There are functions, but they do have, we'll say, evolutionary, and even we'll say uh, current uh, defensive functions that can help you survive, but in many other circumstances are absolutely harmful and negative.
Well,
Right.
sure, but I mean, like, it's whether you're hating, an object or a situation or a creature or a group of people for being different than you. You know, like,
Right.
hate doesn't have to be any less healthy. I mean, like, anger isn't necessarily unhealthy, but being angry all the time is. Hate
Yeah.
isn't
Yeah.
necessarily unhateful or unhealthy, but it is if you're being hateful all the time. Like, all those negative emotions are, I mean, like, they're there for a reason, and it's still good to be angry every once in a while. Let yourself be mad, let yourself be sad, that kind of stuff.
Right. Just but
But
don't dwell
but
in.
being hateful, yeah, living in that hatred is just like living in anger, or living in sadness, or like any of the rest of those, like, those negatives. I mean, like, it's going to have a mental and physical toll on you, and it
It is.
exists for a reason.
It's like a
But like,
poison. It is.
but when you let it get out of its box of, why it's still here. It's okay to hate spiders because there are some spiders that could still hurt you pretty bad. It's not okay to hate, people because their skin is a different color, or because they go to a different church, or because they speak a different language. Like, there's so many reasons to, like, not there's so many things that people hate about other people, that it's just like,
Yeah.
how is that justifiable, when it's just like, okay, I do get that, you hate the idea of, being trapped in the woods being chased by a polar bear. I kind of hate that too. That sounds like it's really crappy, and I would hate being there. But I mean, like, I do not, hate my new neighbor because I don't understand what they're cooking. Fuck that, that's
Right.
stupid.
Right. But there's certainly a lot of people that, and I've met them, and I'm sure you have too, that they've been raised or conditioned by whatever environmental influences that have been around them to distrust in a very aggressive and hateful way people
Any
who are different from them. They're just immediately suspicious, right?
Yeah.
Uh, from the beginning. If you don't look like them, I mean, I've experienced this myself. That if you just look a little different from what they're used to seeing, like if you're not from around here, right? If you're from the country and you're in the city, you might get that. If you're from the city and in the country, you might get it. Or there's any time you go somewhere where they're not used to seeing someone like you, or go to a different place, you might encounter something like that. Uh, or just with hateful people that are insecure, right? That are looking, because those people, they can find something to hate in anyone. It doesn't matter, no matter what you do. I'm sure everyone listening, and I'm sure you as well, Jordan, have had a situation where you've had somebody that just fucking hates you and you have no idea why. It's like, I don't know what the hell I did, but this person fucking hates me, dude. They want me dead. They're doing everything they can. I have no idea what the hell I did. And you may not ever even know why. That just does happen. when someone, for whatever reason, chooses to hate other people,
Oh
and
yeah.
it may be you look like somebody that did them wrong, or you're the certain type of person they just don't like for whatever reason. And some people just they choose hatred as a lifestyle. I think most of us have encountered someone like that where they're just looking for something to
Or like
to
mostly it's for me, and like most of the time when I've found myself being hated, it's more like, I know why you're mad, but like, why are you that mad? Like,
Right.
that's
It's gone past anger, right? It's gone
yeah,
past
exactly. It's
anger
just
to
like,
hate. It's like,
yeah, you've been stewing on this for long enough to where it's like, let it
right.
go,
So what made it jump, right, to go to that level,
Yeah.
that it went from like it's not enough to like they're so mad, like they're not mad anymore, they hate you. They're not trying to change your mind anymore. It's like they've just ruled you
They,
out as a piece of
yeah,
shit.
yeah, exactly. They just want to squish me now, and it's like, I'm okay. Like,
If they can
that's
find some way to destroy you or stab you in the back or do anything to mess up your life, they'll do it.
yeah.
And it's because of something. I think that some people they'll take that one thing that they did or they thought you did, right? And they will generalize it out to everything about you. Like one off moment, right? And we all have bad moments. I've had a few 100,000. I'm sure I'm sure our listeners might have had a couple, Jordan, perhaps you as well, that sometimes you make a mistake, right? You don't say the right thing or do the right thing, it comes out wrong. Maybe you put too fine a point on something, and maybe you slap somebody's ego down a little too hard one time. And it's they or whatever that they decide after. Some people can do it, they choose hate, right, and it doesn't take much for them to do it. Other people, right, it might not be based on anything at all, right, an imagined grievance that's not even real.
Or just raised so neck deep in it. It's just like, when you're brought up, I mean, like, it's a way of life. So generational hate and generational racism is, it's like generational alcoholism.
Right,
Like,
and hate, yeah,
if
good point.
if it's part of life, it's part of life. you know
Right, and like once, yeah, there's hateful people. Once the typical groups that aren't around for them to hate on, they start hitting on each other because they don't have anyone else, so they start looking at the other differences.
Well, I mean, like, with the internet, though, I mean, like, you can find anybody you want to hate anywhere. So, I mean, like, you can be a white supremacist in a town with no black people in it, but you
Yeah.
can go online and hate black people, anywhere in the world. Like,
Right,
and
that's a problem. Yeah.
it's like, so, like, that's what they're using the internet for. Like,
Yes.
um, and it's just yet again one of those things where it's just like, now you can amplify your ability to make no sense.
Yeah, I think, well, moving, kind of touching on what you're saying, moving towards like some different solutions, right?
Yeah.
That uh as far as dealing with hatred, uh, that um, to change in our behavior as a society can only really be sustained if we challenge the underlying beliefs and assumptions that maintain like toxic, hateful behavior. When a person finds themselves blaming an entire group, they should challenge that perception by conducting a comprehensive analysis of their behavior. What is the evidence that the out group or the person are responsible for a particular situation, or the facts or the acts of a few, right? This is from Lobsang Ropke from the Psychology of Hate from Psychology Today in March of 2018. He offers some different suggestions for addressing hate. He says to make a
Searching
list.
and fearless moral inventory.
Yeah, I mean that's harder than you think, right?
Yes, it is.
To really face what you're doing and being honest with yourself about why you're treating people the way you're treating people. Was you know was what you did the right thing? Why did you do that? What was the reason for it? are your feelings actually justified by actual, you know, actual evidence? But he says here, he goes on to say, make a list of evidence for and against your own beliefs and assumptions. Based on the conclusion of the analysis, replace your maladaptive beliefs and assumptions with ones that are more realistic and adaptive. Ask yourself, what are the origins of these beliefs? Try recalling the earliest time in your life when you experienced hate towards a significant person. It won't take long to figure out how these unprocessed feelings are projected to the outgroup. Take concrete steps to re-educate yourself by reading and watching objective-based information. Evaluate the issues from the viewpoint of, of all different sides, not just your own preferred source or sources of information. And the more diverse and credible the sources, the better. And if you want others, right, to hear and understand your legitimate grievances, you must also understand theirs. This is more of just like a basic contract, right, between individuals and groups, which is sort of the basis, sort of contract theory, sort of the basis for all governments and, human cooperation. Reach out to members on the other side or sides and genuinely listen and try to appreciate their perspective by putting yourself in their shoes. The capacity to do so will allow you to change your beliefs where you are misinformed or wrong, right? Inform yourself, right? Reach out to these other groups you're having issues with. Be willing to, get to know them and talk to them and understand their side of things. And he also says, understand that hate is extremely destructive, whichever way you cut it, by recognizing the serious threat that hate creates for our personal, communal, and national well-being. Learn to spot stereotyping, scapegoating, and dehumanizing behavior in ourselves and others and in certain leaders so that we can start challenging such prejudiced verbal and non-verbal behavior. So those are just some of the suggestions he said for confronting, hatred, of others and even hateful behavior in yourself. So what do you think, Jordan? Thoughts?
Well, I mean, hatred, saying, don't be hateful is like telling someone not to be mad when they're mad, just like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. Wow, thanks.
I mean, hatred is different though, right? It's longer term. It's
right. Yeah. So you're right there, but I mean, like, it depends. I mean, like, it depends on whether or not that person's ready. I mean, we're having the conversation about it, obviously, like, we're thinking about hatred and like how it's affecting us, how to like get over it, be less hateful, because everybody experiences the feeling of hate to some degree about something. Sometimes it's toxic, sometimes it's not. Is it arbitrarily good or bad? No, but if you let it take over,
abused, right? Yeah.
Really? So I mean, like,
Well, yeah, it's the difference between have you actually been abused by someone, or is it just a perception of abuse that doesn't actually hold up to scrutiny, right?
Right.
Is it real? First of all, are your grievances against this person or group accurate, right? And again, here's the problem with even if your grievances against a group or individual are accurate, right? If this group has done tremendous harm to you or whatever, or this person, that even if you're justified in being angry at them or even arguably hating them back, that hatred is maladaptive just the same.
Right. It's still, it's not getting you anywhere. I mean, like, I feel like you can use anger to a positive end, but I don't think anybody's ever used hatred to a positive end,
I mean, I think perhaps in like the battlefield, right, a certain level of hatred might be inevitable.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, like,
that's a difficult discussion.
Fair enough. But I mean, like, I'm talking about, I mean, like, that's one of those, situations where like it's almost justifiable to feel that hatred, because otherwise, how do you survive? Yeah. But I mean, like, the people, wearing, white robes and burning crosses out in the freaking woods aren't freaking hating on people to survive. Right. There's that's, once again, where is hatred good and useful? Where is it bad? Where is it festering and disgusting and rotten? And
Yeah, I mean, that's been going on right for millennia, right? Where the
yeah, and like, the trick is, having more educational resources, even more available for people that like want to explore it. I mean, like, and you can't tell somebody that isn't ready to change that it's time to change. It's just like, it's, like you can't make somebody that doesn't want to quit doing drugs anymore, that you can't make somebody that doesn't want to stop being racist anymore stop being racist.
yeah,
Like,
it's gonna be hard with a lot of these
you got to open your
states.
eyes and look around and freaking, like, take off the hate colored glasses and accept some things, and then you can move forward.
Absolutely, 100%, and certainly it's going to be more challenging to combat hate in this country when you've got some states like Florida that aren't even going to allow you to, Florida and many others that aren't even going to allow teachers to talk about the history of slavery or racism in the United States. That if you're going to try and address that, it has to be, like Florida, for example, where part of their curriculum was their new curriculum talking about slavery in public schools was to address the benefits of slavery, right? That there were certain benefits that slaves accrued from slavery, like that they learned important skills.
Well, I mean, like, there weren't a ton of people going on freaking transatlantic cruises at the time. Actually, no, I guess there were. There wasn't any other way to get across the ocean. No, benefits of slavery, huh? That's
Yeah, that's real. That's for real.
they're teaching that in public school in 2023. That's great.
Florida
That's fucking great. Yeah,
and
yeah.
a
USA,
number of states where
USA.
they're not
Yeah.
allowing you to talk about slavery. They're banning it from the curriculum or restricting what you can actually say about it. Um, and that's largely because there's people on the far right in this country that just don't want to acknowledge what happened, and you know,
Yeah,
this
their attitude is basically, "Oh, get over it already." It's like, are
right,
you
yeah,
fucking kidding me? uh,
exactly.
some people.
So yeah, there is that, and so education obviously is a big part of it, right? But also, I think even with hate doesn't conquer hate, right? Uh, Hate just creates more hate.
Yeah.
And like, even if maybe sometimes you have to engage, and I'm not even sure this is true, but like in some type of hatred to survive, some type of extreme crisis, like warfare or something else, maybe that's the only way, that you have to let it go. Like anger in that regard, that you can't, where anger can be certainly, I mean, anger is largely associated with more, negative outcomes. But yeah, there can be times when anger is adaptive, right? Can save you, right, from being abused or harmed. Um,
Well, yeah,
or
it's a
survival.
defense mechanism. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's a fight or flight.
yeah, ultimately, like, those emotions like that are survival mechanisms. The anger, the hate, things like that. It's, to
Right. But they have to be
make.
managed, right? Regardless of what our feelings or sentiments are, whether they be anger or contempt, or hatred, that they have to be managed and controlled, or they control us
Absolutely.
and they dominate us. And but that all the effects of hatred are so negative, right? That they they outweigh any potential benefits of of what someone might say the benefits are of hatred.
Hmm.
Even some would claim they have the benefits of hating on people, right? The pleasure they get from despising certain people and seeing them, suffer, and deriving pleasure from seeing people they don't like suffer. The hateful people do derive pleasure from that. Uh, there have been, experiments. I think referred to one here where early on, where yeah, they, when the out group, experienced pain, like they they experienced pleasure when they witnessed it. Uh,
Yeah.
so there is that of deriving pleasure from the misfortune of others, particularly those you don't really dislike or hate.
There's a German word for that, the deriving pleasure from like the misfortune of others. It's called Schadenfreude.
Yeah, Schadenfreude. That's right.
It's like laughing
Yes.
when somebody stubs their toe.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Brought to us by the Germans. Hey, full disclosure, just so you know, I'm part German myself, so I'm not picking on the Germans any more than anyone else.
Yeah, no, some of my
But
best friends are Germans, man.
guys, you got to take that hit a little bit, folks. Just uh, you you do that stuff. You got to take some criticism there for a while. But it's
Yeah.
like it's like everybody's got to own up to their crimes, right? I have to admit for the wrongs I've done personally, the bad shit I've done in my life, and nations and people have to do the same as well. Like the United States, everybody has done bad things at some point, right? And some more guilty than others, some more aggressively evil, and some more effective and efficient at it, especially with new technological developments, right? I mean, genocide, murder, mass, mass murder, butchery has gone on for millennia. But certainly I think we've seen with, the advent of the Industrial Revolution and technology, our ability in recent years, over the past couple hundred years, or even far more recent than that, right? Especially with, to kill, millions of people very quickly, right? People that you might hate, right? Because they subscribe to a different ideology. That's what we were facing in the Cold War, right? And think of the state of mind that people were in back then, right? That the perception that this group, all these communists, hated us, and some did, right? Just like that, they were taught too to hate all people from the West, associated with capitalism, right? With a capitalist culture, and these were the concept that was being prevailed upon everyone, right? Between both sort of parties was, that it was an existential crisis, right? The world could have come to an end, absolutely, simply because of that level of intolerance and fear and hatred. And a lot of it was just based on paranoia and fear, right? I mean, certainly there were a lot of reasons to be afraid of Russia, but I think that they had reasons to be afraid of us as well. And I think that's always the thing. There's when we're talking about statecraft, you're talking about competing nations or people competing against each other. It's not that there aren't legitimate fears or issues, legitimate concerns. It's that the irrational, right, fear and deep, that lead to hatred, right? It's like hatred is a lie, right? I guess we were talking about when we were saying that there is some arguably some benefit to hatred, that even if that is true, it doesn't change the fact that hatred is a lie, because it's based on this flawed assumption from the beginning that so and so is all bad, right? Because no one is all bad. Not even the biggest piece of shit human in the world is all bad. There's still some good stuff about them, right? And as bad as they may be, as terrible and as the most evil, suckiest people may be, like, we don't know what got them to that place. It doesn't change the fact that they're not a good person, right? That they really suck and need to be like in prison for the rest of their lives or whatever. But that even hating on someone like that, who a lot of people would argue say deserves to be hated, right? That provides no benefit either. Right? It's understandable to hate the perpetrator of evil, right? But it's not really right. It's not right.
Well, right. Well, and I mean,
because I mean, even the worst person.
The long-term nature of hatred is it's damaging to you. It's like at the end of the day, the people that are the people that you want to hate aren't worth your energy. Like,
great point. Yes, yes, absolutely.
and whether you're hating them justifiably or not, like if you feel that strongly and that negatively about them, let them the hell go.
Yeah, just let them go.
Blow it
Don't-
off.
yeah.
I mean, like if they're giving you an ulcer, then then run, girl.
Yes. Why keep the hatred alive?
Yeah, you don't gotta kill them, and just get out,
Just
just
get
go.
away.
You don't like them, then fine, then remove yourself. If it's you that's doing the hate and you're feeling the negativity, then bounce. But I mean, I hate you, you have to go. I mean, like maybe if they're sitting in your living room, and it's it's like whatever, whoever's trying to ruin your Thanksgiving dinner, sure, fine. But I mean, like, yeah, hate for hate's sake never did anybody any good.
I think
I
it's the
mean, like
long
they're,
term. It's the long term aspect, especially, right? One, it's the sort of dishonest, incorrect belief assumption that someone is all bad, right? That they're completely irredeemable, unreachable. It may appear to be that way, and it may be that way mostly, but it ignores one that whatever good aspects there may be of them that do exist too, and it completely ignores all the underlying reasons for what got them there that you probably don't know that much about to begin with.
well, yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, like everybody's got some good in them, but at the same time, I mean, like there are those out there that are so bad as to be, considerably, irredeemable. You know,
It
so
could be considered irredeemable, but like the even hating on that person, like what good does that do,
right.
right?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. It's they're.
Besides teach more hate.
It's
Teach,
paradoxical, and it's paradoxical in that, like, I mean, like, to really to really deal with hate, you have to realize that the people worthy of your hate are not worthy of your hate, are not worthy of the energy that it takes to hate them.
that
You
is
know,
so well stated. I love it. That is awesome. What you just said is perfect. That is the perfect way to end it. Can we end it? Just because I think you nailed it.
Thanks. Sure, I'd love to.
Awesome. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you. That's it for this episode of the breakdown on the origins of hatred. It's been a very lightning for me. Great discussion. I hope you all felt that way as well. On our next episode, which will be titled "Deceptive Definitions," it's going to be all about the astounding amount of misuse of extremely important concept ideas and even very basic definitions that ultimately mislead the general public to misunderstand key aspects of human behavior, our culture, societies, and even our civilization.
Oh, this is going to be a fun one.
Yes. Yes, agreed. So extensive, we obviously can't talk about all of them, but we're going to focus on the really important ones, as well as provide the reasons for why these gross inaccuracies take place and illustrate how pervasive a problem this is that has virtually flown off the radar with devastating consequences as a result. This is a very important episode that I hope you will check out coming in October. So until then, I say, Jordan, thank you again. Always a pleasure. Always enjoy our discussions. So
My
thank you
pleasure
so
as
much.
well. Thank you, sir.
And thank you everyone for listening. So until next time, take good care of each other. Talk
Don't
to you
be a
soon.
hater.
Don't be a hater.